Good evening and welcome. Thank you for being here. It's wonderful to see students, faculty, staff, and community members gather here tonight. We are so grateful for your presence as we come together to reflect, to learn, and to be inspired. I'm Liza Johnson, Director of the Wendt Center for Character and Leadership here at the University of Dubuque. And the Wendt Center seeks to cultivate character and servant leadership guided by a vision of seeking knowledge and insight, supporting well-being, strengthening community, and serving others. These pursuits help us to grow in virtues needed to contribute to the common good. One way we live this mission out is through the Michael Lester Wendt Character Lectures, made possible by the generosity of the Wendt family. Tonight, we are honored to welcome Joshua Freedman, CEO and co-founder of 6 Seconds, a global nonprofit dedicated to teaching emotional intelligence, and is also a leading expert in EQ, an author of several books, and a master certified coach who has worked with organizations around the world, from United Nations to Microsoft. He is helping lead people with purpose and empathy. His lecture, From Me to We, Developing Character from the Common Good, invites us to consider how true fulfillment is found not in pursuing success for ourselves alone, but in dedicating our lives in something larger, serving others and strengthening communities we share. Before we hear from Josh, let us please pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for gathering us here tonight. Open our hearts and our minds as we listen to Josh's words. May his message inspire us to live with integrity, compassion, and purpose, and to serve our communities with care. Bless Josh as he shares his insights and guides us all in walking the path of the common good. Amen. Please join me in welcoming Joshua Freedman.
Hello. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. And it's my first time in Dubuque. So I'm glad to get a chance to finally visit Dubuque. I've been working with the city and with Liza and with members of the team for several years now, and so it's really a pleasure to get to be here with you in person. As Liza said, I want to explore this question with you tonight about this notion of the greater good. And I'd like to even begin with this question of, is there really such a thing? Is there something that we could point to out in the world? Is there something that we could commit to and be part of and say, yeah, I think there is a greater good, and I want to be part of it? And I think that sounds like a kind of simple question in some way, but I think it's actually quite a challenging and profound question in the world as it exists today, and what we're experiencing in the United States and all around the world. As I will share with you, I'm looking at data from 169 countries and seeing these trends in emotional intelligence, and they're alarming me. And that's leading me to say, I think there's some things we might need to really pay attention to. And there's some things we might need to do differently for ourselves and for this greater good, if we can find it. I'd like to jump in to a notion, which is this concept that we have been exploring at 6 Seconds of emotional recession. And anybody studying economics in the room? You'll recognize the definition of an economic recession. An economic recession is about 3/4 or more of sustained contraction of the output of an economy. And we can see that output of the economy in things like GDP and job rates and the availability of cash. And when those things start to get smaller over multiple quarters, economists say, okay, we're in a recession. What I would like to explore tonight is the notion that we might be in an emotional recession. And in an emotional recession, instead of looking at the outputs of the economy, I'd like us to think about the inputs to the economy, how we show up, how we serve, how we support, how we participate, how we engage in the world around us, how we engage in our athletics, how we engage it at the restaurant, how we engage with a stranger walking down the street. And I would suggest that that engagement has a profound effect on society, and that it has a profound effect on us. And that this emotional recession represents a significant threat to us individually and collectively, and is a call for us to consider how we are engaging and what we're prioritizing. So in this notion of emotional recession, these things on your left might be happening. And as people are paying this tax, this emotional tax in every interaction, they might be finding it's harder to communicate with people, even people we like, let alone people we disagree with. We might be finding it harder to talk to a friend and say, hey, do you want to have lunch today? And the friend says, I'm not sure. It's hard for me to commit. I've got a lot going on. It may be hard for us to say yes. It may be hard for us to step out of our own comfort zones because our comfort zones don't feel so comfortable. And we're feeling this weight. Can any of you relate to that weight that I'm talking about? So for me, early in the pandemic, I experienced really deep depletion for the first time in my life. And I went into this cycle of burnout that I had written about, I had researched about, I knew a lot about theoretically, but I'd never actually experienced for myself. And I found myself so deeply depleted that it actually took me years to recover my energy. And I don't think I've really fully recovered my energy from that place. I feel the weight of this emotional recession in the days when it's harder to get up. I feel the weight of this emotional recession when I'm trying to solve challenges with people. And the people that I'm interacting with are feeling a lot of volatility and feeling a lot of struggle and aren't showing up at their best, and I'm not showing up at my best. And that combination is problematic. Have you seen that? Have you seen that in your interactions at school, in life, walking down the street, in the headlines? There's a lot of added emotional complexity. And the research data that stunned my team and I was my team and me, was to see this decline in emotional intelligence scores, again, across 169 countries over this many-year period. And we'd seen in the past decade emotional intelligence scores going up and down and changing, but to see so much downward momentum consistently across multiple years led us to say there's something we really have to figure out. Now, to take this to a more granular level, the way we measure emotional intelligence is comprised of a bunch of different competencies. I'm not going to get into all of them, but I really want to focus on a few of them tonight. One of them is navigating emotions, which is our ability not to just manage emotions, but to engage with emotions, to figure out what emotions are telling us, to listen to our own feelings and one another's feelings, and to have those feelings be useful to us, as opposed to kind of spilling all over like a cup of coffee. Intrinsic motivation, finding the energy within, not being reliant on somebody else saying to us, hey, you got to go do this thing, this is important, get your booty moving out the door. It's that inner fire that gets us moving by ourselves. And it's dropped a lot. Exercise optimism. Can we see possibilities? Can we see that there are things that maybe haven't worked, but with some effort we could make them work? And survey says, no, we're not seeing that as much in the world as we did 5 years ago. And then I'll skip over empathy. Empathy did decline, but not as much, to pursue noble goals, which is the competency I really want to focus on tonight. Pursue noble goals is about seeing purpose, feeling that purpose, and putting it into action in our day-to-day. And it seems like a kind of abstract idea, and I'm going to come back to this and make it more concrete for you. But pursuing noble goals, we use the word pursue, which sometimes means to chase after with hostility, is one definition of pursue. And that is not the definition that I want you to hold on to. By pursue, I want you to think about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the kind of pursuit which means living, embodying, bringing into our day-to-day, to make our purpose something alive in us. That is what I mean by pursue. And as you can see, as a world, again, 169 countries, this is a randomized sample of people, and we are less able to do that than we were 5 years ago. So that's bad news, and I have worse news, which is that the younger you are, the more problematic this emotional recession is likely to be for you. And you can see here that there are several competencies where younger people's scores not only dropped, but plummeted. And this is deeply alarming. And I imagine if you're a young person, you might be looking at this going, yeah, we knew that. I felt that. I saw that with my friends. I can see around me that people are struggling with emotions, that they're feeling less motivated, and they're less able to tap into and feel that sense of purpose. But shouldn't young people, isn't this exactly what being young is for? Right? Like as a young person, isn't what your life is about is exploring and trying things and getting out in the world and encountering life and navigating it? And being a risk taker and saying, okay, I'm going to try this, I'm going to make this happen. And your parents and other people are saying, please don't do that, that seems really dangerous. And you're like, I'm doing it anyway. Like that's what we're supposed to do when we're young. And yet, this data is suggesting that young people, at least in this sample, again, across the entire world, are finding it hard to find their energy and to say, yeah, I'm going to try it. And less able to feel this connection with the future. And I would suggest this combination puts people into a position where their buckets are drained, where it's hard to find the resources to go out in the world and make things happen. Whether go out in the world could be, going to the cafeteria or going to a sports field or going to this beautiful theater. It's harder to find that potential. It's harder to find that strength in yourself. And I think as somebody who's an educator and a parent and a leader in an organization working with people of many ages, this deeply concerns me. And I would like to consider a big question, which is, if this is the state that people are in, how do we do this work of character? How, as people who are depleted, do we go out and take the risks to be courageous? As people who want to just stay in bed, how do we go out in the world and talk to people? As people who feel a sense of there's a threat out there, there's a threat all around us, we're burdened by this, how do we open our hearts? How do we reach out to people and build connection? How do we actually sustain and feel and fuel this common good? Well, I have some ideas, but I don't actually have the answer. What I hope is that you come up with some, and that together we can make this situation better. And I would like to start with some advice from Taylor Swift. And recently on her fiance's podcast, she shared this quote. We're living in an economy that's sometimes described as the attention economy. There are literally billions of dollars a year being spent to try to get you to pay attention to something. On here. And so much of our identity has become here. Our sense of worth, how many likes did I get? Our sense of community, who am I interacting with? Our engagement with the world. How much time are people having this device in between them and the world? Right? And that's not an accident. That didn't just happen. This is the result of a lot of really good engineering and a lot of really good marketing and design to grab our attention and to hold our attention. And in this world of this attention economy, there are all of these things that are trying to pull us away from one another in this human experience and away from ourselves. There's so much noise. Our brains are basically filters. Mostly what your brain does is ignore stuff. Our brains are incredibly good at ignoring things. And we ignore 99.9% of the stimulus that comes into our senses. But as we get more and more and more alerts, our phones are buzzing, our rings are buzzing, our watches are buzzing, our person sitting next to us, stuff is buzzing. There's like all this stuff saying, pay attention to me, pay attention to me, pay attention to me. And at some point, our brains can no longer filter all that out. And there's some really interesting way of looking at this is the amount of data there is in the world. And it used to be that it took 1,000 years for the amount of data in the world to double. And then it took 500 years, and then it took 100 years, and then it took 10 years, and now it takes a year. Now it takes less than a year. And just the amount of data that's out there that we're processing is so big, and there's so much of it saying, pay attention to me, pay attention to me, pay attention to me, that it's very hard for our brains to cope with all of that. And so one of the solutions to this condition that we're facing is to figure out how to do this, how to say, I'm not actually going to pay attention to everything. I'm going to decide. How do we decide? How do you decide what to pay attention to? How do you decide what is actually important? And is that something you can do by yourself? Or are you relying on somebody else to say to you, oh, no, stop paying attention to that. Don't look over here. How much are you able to even hear your own voice? To even hear your own voice telling you, this matters. And when we're in this depleted state, when we're in this place where we're carrying all of this complexity and all this uncertainty, in this very noisy context, I think it's incredibly difficult to hear ourselves. We're going very fast. There's a lot that's giving us these kind of dopamine hits when our phones buzz, when all these alerts happen. And how do we know this is my intuition speaking? How do we know this is the Spirit moving me? How do we know this is what really matters? This is what I'm called to. How do we know? When there's so many things saying, pay attention to me, pay attention to me. And we are trained and conditioned to look outside ourselves. Oh, let me look here. What's important? Okay, that seems important. How do I hear this? How do I hear this? And I would suggest to you that the starting point is for us to make more space to listen to our own emotions and to listen to one another's emotions. And to use emotions as a way to connect ourselves with what's real and here and now. In order to cope with this emotional recession, I think we have two tasks in front of us. One is to plug the leaks. We're all just draining our emotional energy. There are all these things that are poking holes in our buckets. And we've got to become good leak pluggers. But that's not enough. And I think there's it's an interesting paradox. You spend a little time on Instagram and you say, I want to, find some good advice on building up my emotional well-being and building my emotional strength and having some, workouts for I need an emotional gym. You can get great advice about self-care, about, where to set some limits, how to create better boundaries, how to make more time in your day. But that's not going to fill your bucket. And what's interesting is that the research on what actually fills our buckets is not the same thing as the research on what allows us to plug the leaks. So, I look at this through the lens of emotional intelligence because I've spent the last 28 years studying emotional intelligence and studying how we can grow and practice and implement this. And the organization that I lead does this all over the world. We work in every single country and territory. And basically what we see is that around the world there are all kinds of challenges that we're facing in our businesses, in our communities, in our universities, in our sports teams. There are all kinds of challenges that we face, and most of those challenges come down to choices that human beings are making. And a big part of what's driving those choices is that we're disconnected from our own humanity. We're disconnected from feeling that sense of common good, feeling that sense that we are actually in this together. And so, at 6 Seconds, we work on emotions as a universal human language. Emotions as a way for us to connect with each other and to feel that sense of what's really important. And how many of you are familiar with this model on the right? Okay, a bunch of you in the front here, I'm glad to see. So at the University of Dubuque, there is one of the only programs in the world in higher education of its kind where students get to study emotional intelligence and learn these 3 steps. And these 3 steps, know yourself, is about pausing and getting the data, noticing. And this is very difficult in the emotional recession. It's very difficult to actually notice what you're feeling, and not just the surface feeling. My favorite coaching question is, what else are you feeling? It's maybe not easy, but it's relatively easy to kind of notice the loud feeling. I'm tired, I'm annoyed, I'm frustrated, I'm sad, I'm excited. The more interesting question to me is, what else are you feeling? What else is going on there? And noticing that there's these multiple voices, these multiple emotions that you're feeling that give you perspective. And I would suggest there are no negative or positive feelings. Feelings are just data. They're messages from you, for you. And every emotion helps you notice something different. So when you're frustrated about something, you notice there's something in the way. When you're sad about something, you notice there's something you care about that you're distant from. When you're lonely, you notice your relationships with self and others. We could go through lots of different feelings. But every one of these feelings is a message from you for you, saying, hey, did you notice that? Hey, are you paying attention to this? Hey, there's something I think you should think about. It's right over there. Your emotions are doing that. They're giving you these little nudges. And interestingly, when you ignore them, they often get louder, right? And they're like, you really need to pay attention to this. Are you sure you want to do that thing? Right? And your emotions are challenging you. Any of you see the movie Inside Out or Inside Out 2? So I really liked the way they characterized in Inside Out that all these emotions are trying to help us figure our way through this complexity that we're facing. And the first step, I would suggest, this know yourself step, is to just notice those feelings and go, oh, that's interesting. I'm feeling something. I don't need to do anything about it. I don't need to fix it. I don't need to fade it. I don't need to solve it. This is really hard in the emotional recession because we're sitting next to somebody and they're going, I think I'm having a horrible day. And it's like, yeah, I'm having a horrible day too. And that now all of a sudden feels really heavy and big. And it's hard in that moment just to go, oh, okay, there it is. Well, what else are you feeling? We don't need to solve that. But it's incredibly powerful when we can engage with one another in this way of just mutually supportive curiosity. Choose yourself is red for stop. And it's about pausing. And rather than jumping into a solution or jumping into the way we've done things before, just taking a moment and pausing and saying, okay, what are my options? Can I expand the number of options? And I would suggest that in simple terms, the more options we create for ourselves, the more likely it is that we're going to be able to find a solution to the complicated problem that's in front of us. That if we keep doing the same old things, we get the same old results. And so this red part is really crucial for us to stop and go, I'm not going to keep doing the same old thing. I'm going to try engaging in a different way. And this slowing down gives us this pause to go, all right, I notice there's something going on, blue part. I'm going to pause and reflect on it just for a moment, maybe 6. And then I'm going to step forward. Well, where am I going to go? And this green part is where we decide and we connect beyond ourselves. In this green part is increasing empathy, feeling a sense of connection with others. Not empathizing as a one-way street, but feeling a connection, feeling a mutuality that supports us too. And pursuing noble goals. And I love in Alice in Wonderland, do you remember when Alice says to the Cheshire Cat, which way should I go? Anybody remember that? Well, Alice says to the Cheshire Cat, which way should I go? And the Cheshire Cat says, where are you trying to get to? And Alice says, well, I don't know. And the Cheshire Cat says, then it doesn't really matter which way you go. Go that way. Because if you don't know where you're trying to get to, it's very hard to choose where to go. So in this green part of the model, this question of purpose, this question of your noble goal becomes incredibly important. So, the challenge is there is so much attention that we're paying to these externalities, these things that seem important, these things that seem big, these things that are visible in our lives. And it's these more subtle elements, these roots of who we are, that ultimately shape everything else. But they're harder to see. They're harder to notice. And pursuing a noble goal is really about this work. It's about who do you want to be, not just what do you want to do. And I would suggest to you that this question is a question that will make a tremendous amount of difference in your life. Who do you want to be in this situation? As you look at this moment that you're in today, whatever age and stage you are, and you say, okay, so 5 years from now, I'm going to look back in this moment, and I'm going to see I did a bunch of things. Who was I? Who do I want to be? And when we shift to who do I want to be, we shift to things like, well, I want to be brave. I want to be caring. I want to be loyal. I want to be generous. I want to be successful. I want to be a good friend. I want to be a decent human being. This is character. Character is a set of answers to that question of who you want to be. And perhaps that question may be the most important question for us to ask. Who do we want to be? And in particular, in complicated, difficult times, who do we want to be? Who do we want to be in these times when people are struggling? Who do we want to be when we're struggling? Who do we want to be when the world seems to be messy? I was going to use a swear word, but I don't think I'll do that here. When the world seems to be messy, who do we want to be? In the 6 seconds model, we define a noble goal by using these 5 criteria. A noble goal is an answer to who you want to be that meets these 5 criteria. It's important that it's beyond your lifetime, because when we get caught up in, I'm going to finish this thing, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to go to college, and I'm going to graduate, and then I'm going to go to graduate school, and then this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. We get really focused on the doing. And remember, a noble goal, we're trying to sort of step away and go, let's talk about being. So we ask people to think about a noble goal that you're never going to be done with. And that's a little problematic in a world that's really excited about like accomplishing things and doing things. But what if, just for example, maybe you say, well, Josh, I really want to become a nurse. Okay, cool. That's a thing you're doing, but that's not beyond your lifetime, right? You're going to do that, some of you, in a few years. Why? Why do you want to be a nurse? Well, it's a good job. Okay. Why else? Well, because I care about something. What is that something that I care about? When you start touching that thing that it is you care about that's underneath the thing you want to do, you're going to start talking about that purpose that's beyond your lifetime. And probably it's something like supporting myself and others. Probably it's something like lifting up something in humanity. Probably it's something like this deeper aspiration, and maybe a universal aspiration that people have, that when you start to think about this question of, well, why would I do that, and why would I do that, and why would I do that, and we start seeing this thing that I can work on that's beyond my lifetime. For me, I decided mine is compassionate wisdom. And I decided that I grew up in a family that was really intellectual and really focused on being smart. And I thought that in order to earn love, I had to be really smart. I thought that if I was the smartest person in the room, then people would love me. It didn't really work. No matter how smart I acted, I didn't get any more people, actually, like my dad, who I really wanted to say, yeah, I love you, you're awesome, just the way you are. It never worked. No matter how much I quoted statistics and tried to be smart, it never happened. And I think many of you can relate to the pain of that. Like, you're trying to be somebody who people will give you that love that you want. People will give you that respect that you want. People will listen to you and support you. And anyway, what I found is it didn't work for me. And so I thought, all right, I'm going to try something different. And you can spend a lot of years working on, kind of chasing that thing that's going to make people love you. And maybe it'll work for you. And awesome if it does. If it doesn't, I want you to remember that you have another option, which is to say, who do I really want to be? Who do I really want to be? What do I want to add to the world? And do that. And then maybe you'll find that you love yourself more when you do that, when you are being that person. That's what I experienced. The second criteria is that the arrow points outward. And the reason, it's not just for the purpose of altruism. The reason we want noble goals where the arrow points outward is because we have all of these pressures about, well, what do I want and what's important for me, and self-focus. If we're going to actually step out of the reaction cycle that we're in, if we're actually going to connect with this greater good that maybe exists, we need to be able to see it and feel it. And so that's why the arrow points outwards. It integrates all domains. That means your noble goal is not just something you do in your job. It's not just something you do at your church, synagogue, mosque, temple. It's not just something you do on that one day a month where you're doing community service. It integrates all domains. Your noble goal is something that you can live and do every day. You're in line at the grocery store and somebody is being really slow and annoying. This is a moment when you can pursue your noble goal. You can say, what do I want to add to the world right now? Can I do it? You're talking to a friend and they're having a hard day. This is a moment when you can pursue your noble goal. And yes, you can also pursue it in your career. And yes, you can pursue it in your leadership roles. And yes, you can pursue it in your church, synagogue, temple, and mosque. And yes, you can pursue it in all these other aspects of your life. But the goal here is to find a goal that is encompassing of all of these competing commitments, because it will help you be a better person. And when you are a better person, you're better at all those things. So, it's not easy to answer that question. Your noble goal needs to be something that gets you out of bed, something that gives you that little bit of extra energy. When you are having those days where you're like, this is just too hard, which we all are having sometimes, more in the emotional recession than we did 5 years ago. What is that message to you that says, you know what, I am going to get out of bed today because what I want to add to the world is this. And finally, we have this criteria in our noble goal definition because there's a lot of people in the world who say, I'm going to set a goal and do things in the world, but I'm going to step along a lot of people along the way. And I would suggest that we are perhaps most able to lift up the greater good when we actually contribute to that greater good in every moment of our lives. So at a minimum, do no harm, right? The Hippocratic Oath. But ideally, in your pursuit of your noble goal, what happens is you lift up and you ennoble others and help them pursue their noble goals. So when you do that, when you find that vision, and this homework assignment, you have as many years as you have left alive to work on this homework assignment. It took me 10 years to write my noble goal. Mine is to inspire compassionate wisdom. And it took me 10 years to find that phrase that really helps me when things are hard. Recently, when we found this data about the emotional recession, my first reaction was, I need to do something. And my second reaction was, but I'm tired. I'm overwhelmed. I'm lonely. This is hard. This is too hard. And by the way, who am I to do this? Why should anyone listen to me? And then this little voice like, well, maybe you should write another book. I'm like, I've already written 7 books. I do not need to write another book. That's hard. I don't want to do that. Don't make me. I just finished my 8th book. It's coming out in March. And what really led me past this challenge? I'm lying to you. I'm not past this challenge. It's really scary right now. I'm at this stage where I'm starting to share the book with people, and it's really scary because I've worked really hard on this, and I care a lot about it. And so my emotions are telling me something. My emotions are telling me this is precious. And then you start sending it to strangers, and then they start sending you emails back saying, yeah, I'm too busy right now, or yeah, good job. Oh, thank you. It's really scary to put a book out in the world. And I'm in this moment of struggle with it. And there are many days when I look at this book and I go, nobody is going to read this book. And I'm crazy to be writing another book. And I shouldn't do it. And then there are these moments where I'm like, yeah, but who do I want to be in this moment of challenge? When I look back on this 5 years from now, I want to see myself as somebody who was willing to step up even when it was hard. I want to look at myself and say, you care. And you care enough to take the risk. And that's hard. It's scary. But that's who I want to be. And I wish I could say to you, oh yeah, I have the solution that makes it easy. I actually don't think emotional intelligence makes us happier in the hedonic sense. I don't think it makes things easy. I actually think feeling is a harder path. I think opening our hearts is a harder path. I think it's easier to be selfish. I think it's easier to just pay attention to what you want today and go after that and ignore that greater good. But I don't think it's who most of us really want to be. I don't think the easier path takes us to be the people that we're called to be. So, if you'd like to read more research about bucket filling, hit that QR code. I just collected a bunch of studies and data and tried to put it together for you to say, here's what the research shows. And in essence, you can plug the bucket through self-care. You fill the bucket through contribution to something larger than yourself. You fill the bucket through community. You fill the bucket through gratitude. Not just gratitude because you have something that's nice for you. It's gratitude that you feel towards others and towards community. By service, not just service because like you're getting credit for your class to do service, but service because you want to contribute to something bigger than you. You fill the bucket through connection. You fill the bucket through community. You fill the bucket by stepping forward in the hopes that that greater good exists and serving it, especially when it's hard. Tomorrow, we're having a super cool event here on campus. How many of you already know you're coming? Great. So we're having a pop-up festival. And pop-up festival is our project in partnership with UNICEF to celebrate World Children's Day. World Children's Day is the day that the most signed legislation in the history of the world was signed. And that legislation is the Declaration on the Rights of the Child. And it is the first time in human history where a governing body in the world said every child has rights. They don't need to be adults, they don't need to make money, they don't need to have inalienable rights. They're born with certain rights. And that we, as a mature civilization, part of what it means to be good human beings in the world is to acknowledge and support those rights. It's actually a phenomenal notion that before, 30 years ago, such a law didn't exist in the world. And now it does. And almost every country in the world has said, yes, children have rights. And it's such a simple, but such a profound notion. And so World Children's Day is the day to honor that. And we created Pop-Up Festival as a way for people all around the world to support children's rights by learning about emotions and the Sustainable Development Goals. And so this happens now in every single country and territory in the world. Over 3.5 million children and adults have participated in this project. It's entirely free all around the world. And we're going to have a huge pop-up festival here tomorrow, focused on kindness. And I want to just bring this back to this idea of pursuing a noble goal. Because a lot of times when people hear pursue noble goal, they think, oh, I have to do something huge. But remember, a noble goal isn't about what you do, it's about who you're being. And so I would like to just do a little pop-up festival activity with you right now. And I would like you to either actually get out a pen or get out a mental pen and create a kindness flower. And the way this activity works is you think about a person who has been kind to you. Anyone. Anyone who's been kind to you. And I want you to think about that person. And if you have a pen in hand, you can write their name in the middle of the flower, or you can mentally, on your mental notebook, you can write their name. And then you make 3 or 4 or 5 or however many petals you like. And each petal, you write something that they have done that is them being kind to you. So, could we just have a little music? And I would like you to reflect for a moment and make your flower. Think about a person who's been kind to you. Mentally write their name. And then what are 3, 4, 5 things that they have done or do that feels like kindness to you? Go. Stop you there, although it may take you more time to really create your flower. But I encourage you to actually make one, because it's actually really kind of fun to do this. I would like you to now turn to the person sitting next to you and talk for a moment. How did it feel to imagine making that flower? How did it feel to think about this kindness that somebody has shown you? Okay, this is a 1-minute conversation. How did it feel to think about that kindness given to you? Go. All right, I'm going to ask you to stop there. Now, if you decide to make your kindness flower, you can put a couple of leaves on your flower, and you can write the answer to that, how did it feel? You can write that on the leaves. And I just would love to have a few of you shout out, if you were to put a leaf on your flower, what might it say on there? As you think about the impact that this kindness had on you, what might you write? Just shout it out.
Unconditional love.
Unconditional love. Grateful. Grateful. Thankful. Appreciative. Worthwhile. Seen. Special. Cherished. Grounded. So just pause for a second there. Folks, it's hard for me to even find the words to say what a big deal that is. Just think about this. In 2 minutes, people connected with feeling unconditional love, cherished, grateful, seen, valued. People had that impact on us. They had that impact on us through very simple things that we put on our flowers. This isn't some grand gesture, I would guess. I mean, maybe you had some grand gesture on your flower. Anybody have a grand gesture on your flower? Like, probably it was simple things like they brought me a coffee, they checked in with me, they cheer me up, they tell me jokes, they say hello, right? They're simple things. And look at the impact of those simple things. This tells you something profoundly important about humanity. What we need is not so complicated. Kindness, in its simplest form, has a profound effect on us. So as you think about your noble goal, I don't want you to overcomplicate it. I want you to consider that it's actually easy. It's actually just part of who you are. And just saying, I'm gonna intentionally bring that part of myself forward a little bit more each day. And look at the impact that that has. And tomorrow we'll get to play more with this. You're all invited. I hope to see you at the Pop-Up Festival. I'm going to take a couple of minutes for questions, and then we will wrap up.
Thank you, Josh, for your presentation. We are so grateful for you and for the message, and we're grateful for this community to practice this, not only as the University of Dubuque, but also the city together. And so we are going to invite our city people as well as part of the pop-up, and it's so exciting for me that we're not just doing this as a university, but we're also thriving together as a community. So whether you're 8 years old, 18, or 88, we all need these skills to be emotionally intelligent or to better our character. So we're just so excited for the opportunity for us to do that together as a community tomorrow. So with Josh's presentation tonight, are there any questions? I know we have probably a couple questions that we can take right now, but Josh is going to be at the very end. He's going to walk out, and you can ask him individual questions if we don't have time tonight. So we have let's give Shia and Nathan a round of applause for our mic people tonight. So they will have the microphone. So if there's a question, go ahead and raise your hand, and then they will get the mic to you so that we can hear that question.
I'm feeling very center stage here.
Yeah, I like it.
Ready. Well, I think the university has made some tremendous progress on this. As I said, there are not very many universities that actually have a class on this, so that is a great start. My view is that the really only way to effectively teach emotional intelligence is to practice it. And so one of the things at 6 Seconds, we have one of our principles is that all change starts on the inside. And so I think for whenever I work with an institution, whether it's a huge company or a small university, the answer is really the same, which is this has to become part of our DNA and the way we interact with ourselves and each other every day. We found in organizations measuring these skills is really helpful because what gets measured, people pay attention to. And so that's one of the reasons we developed a measure of emotional intelligence that many of you have taken. And it helps kind of make this concrete and then to make it part of our daily conversations. Thank you for the question. And maybe make the class required for everyone.
This on? How it is. I appreciate what you shared about the pandemic. For me, it was a matter of flexible choices. I was very joyous to have my children at home sequestered with me involuntarily. I thought I would not see them once again once they had left public school at a earlier age in high school, and my son is at the University of Dubuque and my daughter's at UW-Madison. It was the most marvelous and exhilarating time because I chose that perspective. And about other things, I would suggest perhaps giving up, throw away the TV, no less digitalization, simply analog. I have a analog word processing kit, and that is a number 2 pencil eraser and writing. I'm an observer gathering impressionistic impressions and observations and to write about them, and sometimes that helps. And the problem is not processing, it's finding the words and making them sing, and that's where it is. And also about service, not fame but worth, and service and servitude through parenting, doing things. It was Emerson that talked about those things. How do you change the world? Raise the most beautiful child, write a beautiful essay, compose music, whatever it may be. And those are the things I think to do. And last, just to make one comment is, when you're feeling down and no one's around, just listen to the song within your heart. La da 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 da.
Thank you. I also had the great pleasure of having one of our children enforced home time at the start of the pandemic, and it was really challenging for both of us, all of us, but really wonderful. And I feel like our whole trajectory of our relationships improved as a result.
But
are you going to sing?
You want me to. Okay, how did the idea of 6 seconds inspire you? What inspired you to take this journey for your whole life?
I love that question, and I really didn't intend for it to be 28 years later that I was still working on this. But I think the truth is, it's because I was bad at it. And I was teaching in a school 35 years ago where emotional intelligence was a central part of the program for our students. And these 13-year-olds were much better at it than I was. And they would say, we used first names at this school, and they would say, Josh, when you said da-da-da-da, I felt blah, 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 and I really want to talk to you about the way we're communicating. I'm like, who are you? How did you get, like, how do you do this? And I realized I had never learned how to talk about emotions, and they were really dramatically better at it than I was. And it just made me really curious. And so I started studying emotions, and I've become fascinated. The other thing is that I've been so fortunate to get to work all over the world, and meeting people all over the world and seeing the universality of this human experiences when we start talking about emotions, and this struggle that so many of us have, where it's like, yeah, I feel these things, but I don't know what they are, and I don't know how to talk about them, and I want to be a better person. How can I use these emotions to help me? It's just endlessly fascinating, and it's just kept me very curious and engaged. Thank you for the question.
Okay, thank you again for being here, everybody. Let's give Josh another round of applause for being here tonight. Thank you so much. Again, he will be in the back, so you guys are free to leave, but if you want to hang around, please feel free to meet him in the lobby. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.